is it? Human rights?
Human rights, law, and ethics. I am very much into ethics, and I can tell you it's a lovely debate session. But the speakers should know who they are. Please, if you are a speaker, we are going to jointly make this work. I am standing in for whoever is supposed to be the moderator that is not here. So, thank you. How many speakers are supposed to be here? Is there any other speaker that is supposed to be here and is not here? It gives us time. Any other speaker? Excellent. So we're going to make this work. I'm just a standing moderator. I don't have the full program, but you guys are ready. I'm going to make it work based on what I know. So you're going to start by introducing yourselves and what it is you're going to speak on first. I'll take that, and then we'll go into the session.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Seguja from School of Public Health, Makerere University. I'm here to speak about the media portrayal of the AHA Act in Uganda and on its HIV service delivery.
Media portrayal.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nana Hawa, and I'm representing the Gender Equality Fund Southwest Consortium here today. I'll be speaking on the barriers to healthcare access among marginalized women and sexual minorities in Lagos and Ogun State, Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tawonga Benhilda Mugwanyu. I'm a PhD educator and a student under Students and Youth working on Reproductive Health Action Team in Zimbabwe. And I'm also a student at the University of Zimbabwe. So I'm here to be presenting about how climate change increases HIV and AIDS vulnerability amongst rural Manicaland girls in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much.
Excellent. So we do have thank you, darling. We do have great points here, and I'm looking forward to extensive engagement. I'm going to bring my own perspective on human rights and ethics to this discussion. My name is Morenika Oluwatoyin Upong. I am the treasurer for SAR and the standing moderator. On that note, I think we'll take it from the first speaker, who will be speaking to social media portraits. And please do go to the podium and let's listen to you. Whoever is doing the slides projection, maybe we'll have to leave the podium so that we can also listen and view the presentation. Thank you.
Just so to reintroduce myself, I'm Seguja Eric. I work with the School of Public Health within the Department of Health Policy, Planning and Management at Makerere University. I'm here to talk about the impact of the Uganda Anti-Homosexuality Act on HIV service access and provision. And we conducted a media-based analysis to see how the media was portraying the impact. I have a presentation that I handed to the secretary. Perhaps we can use that. As a way of background, I can start by emphasizing that the discourse around legislating against Anti-Homosexuality Act emerged, gained access on the political priority in 2009. The debates were going on but in the background, and this reached a climax in 2013, where the first attempt was reached Parliament and there was some legislation. Then immediately after, many faults were seen in that act and it was repealed. Then from that time, there was a silence up to most recently within COVID that it again gained prominence and it came on the legislative agenda. And that time it was rushed and it managed to go through the legislative process. Many things were said. Service delivery was impacted. It's one thing to legislate, but it's also another thing to make sure that the legislation achieves the objectives that it has been set to. So immediately after 2023, after its legislation, a lot happened with the service provision. There was doubt on how service delivery was going to be ensured amidst this context. And from the service access point of view, trust, there was doubt that was created in terms of trust, because as the health sector is part of the broader government, and having such a legislation go through, it remains to be seen that implementation follows. One of the immediate reflex was its impact on access to service delivery. And there are some things that may not come out outrightly, but we know media as the fourth estate sometimes fails to portray these things. There was a lot that was reported in there, and at the point of having this law passed, not much was known. Empirical data was lacking. Media framing also varied depending on who said what and who had access to media. Many sentiments were echoed from both the proposers and the opponents. And it's what prompted us to conduct this research to see what is it that was really making it into the media. So, as the main objective of the study is, we wanted to examine, how the Ugandan and the international media portrayed the impact of the 2023 Anti-Homosexuality Act on HIV service access and provision for key population, and identify implications for policy reforms. Like I said, this was a media-based study, so there wasn't that much time to have the process of securing ethical. Oh, thank you. I need to rush at this point. Sorry, this one was distracting me. Perhaps I need to also face the other side. At one point, I thought I was scrolling, but then there was a freeze. So, this was a media-based study. Basically, we looked for all the print and electronic media, and the key search terms were basically those stories that were speaking to the anti-homosexuality legislation, but also looking at how the frames were appearing in the media. Then we used the objective of our study to inform the coding process, and we used the thematic thesis to see what was emerging, and these are the results that we are going to present here. One slide is moving. Hey. Okay. So, these are the main things that emerged from this, from the analysis that we conducted. One of the frames that appeared most was that there was heightened fear and stigma, especially among the LGBT community and the service providers. Also, the immediate effect was that there were service disruptions. Some of the service delivery points registered a drastic decline in the population that was accessing these services. The outreaches were curtailed, and it had a direct impact on funding these services. Also within the media, there were some media, rather legal threats that were appearing, and harassment to the people that were accessing services, but also those that were providing the services. There were some elements of human rights violations, especially people that were known to access these services and where they were staying. Some arrests were registered, evictions, and instances of violence. Then, for the service provider, elements of adaptive innovations, for example, telehealth, home delivery, and community networks to make sure that people that were accessing these services continue to access amidst the chaos that was being realized. So this is a quotation I extracted from one of the local dailies that one of the service providers was quoted as having reported that people are afraid. They think that even walking into the clinic could get them arrested or outed to their communities. These are reflections that were appearing in the media, but also reports of staff intimidation, loss of donor funding when credit wasn't yet provided, and human rights groups documented rising violence. Yeah. These are the consequences as it appears. One was that, just to sum up, drop in service provision, treatment interruptions, but also the outcomes such as viral load and that. Then the last one is the fear that was created. These are the strategies that were adopted by the service providers, telehealth and ART home delivery, quite diplomacy by some of the NGOs to make sure that they maintain service delivery. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Yes, I'll be done. In conclusion, the passing of this legislation in a way disrupted service delivery. Before, there was a circular that was issued by Minister of Health to guide service provision in a way to try to separate human rights aspects that were surrounding this legislation and health service delivery in general. So we conclude that adaptive efforts are insufficient without embedding rights-based approaches in service delivery. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's show appreciation. Apologies, I came in late and then we have to rush this. But I think this is an excellently important session, and together we're going to build this. So the next speaker, apologies, I'm going to rush you also. If you could do less than the initial 10 minutes and then do like 6 minutes so that we can spend a lot more time discussing. I think for me, it's about a call to action. We must leave here with concrete things beyond the same rhetorics. I feel very certain that we'll be back here in 2025 saying exactly the same thing we said in 2023 and 2021 and 2001, and probably the first ICASA self. So I hope we can go leave in here with something tangible. Thank you. Let's have the next speaker, who will be talking about marginalized populations in Lagos and Ogun State. Thank you. Who's that?
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Nana Hawa Adedite. I'm a public health researcher. I work with the Gender Equality Fund Consortium and the Rainbow Alive Hub initiative in Nigeria. Today, I'll be taking us quickly for 6 minutes through the findings of a really pre-gent research we did in Nigeria, in Lagos and Ogun State, where we're trying to find, the specific barriers to HIV services access among marginalized women and sexual minorities in the state. Okay, so why did we actually set out to carry out this project? At the Rainbow Alive Hub initiative, we are a human rights organization that caters for the needs of sexual minorities and key population in Lagos State and Ogun State as well. So we joined the Southwest Consortium with 2 other organizations also following that same mission to look at the specific issues when it comes to HIV access for key population in Lagos and Ogun State. We were very specific with our target. We were looking at lesbian, bisexual and queer women, trans women, female sex workers, women living with HIV, and women who inject drugs. We have seen that over the years, they continue to face heightened risks. They continue to suffer from so many things like structural inequality, stigma, discrimination when it comes to healthcare access. And we're specific on HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria, because tuberculosis and malaria are more like the frequently occurring comorbidities to HIV in the States. So, and we've also seen studies come up saying that there is high prevalence of HTM among key population. However, in these states, we don't know, the research is vague. We don't know the key things we're supposed to fight, because honestly, the efforts on HIV program and HIV care in Nigeria has doubled and tripled over the years. However, we are still seeing some inequalities in getting to our mission. So we realize that, okay, because there is high prevalence among these groups, it is very important that we do some research into the key issues going on. Yeah, I've talked about this. Yes, we had objectives. We're not just trying to identify the issues, we're also trying to hear from them to know how we are going to work with them to create solutions. So it's more like they gave us ideas into the key things that work for them when it comes to accessing HTM service in Lagos State. Yeah, so this is actually what we used when stepping out to carry out this research. This was our conceptual framework. We wanted to be very holistic with the research. We wanted to look into every aspect of the socio-economic, ecological model, rather, in making sure that it guides us in getting the kind of data that we want and the way our analysis was going to go. It was a robust research, like I said. We used qualitative and quantitative methods. We gathered data from a broad number of people, as well as FGDs, key informant interviews, and ideas as well in the states. So these are the breakdown of the people our respondents, basically, like I said, we had the trans community represented, female sex workers, bisexual women. We tried to include every aspect of the key population in the research. And yeah, these are our key findings. Despite all our effort, there's still issues regarding the knowledge of these services, knowledge including where to access them, the requirements to access them, knowledge of actually knowing that there are some places that actually provide the services for them, so people are not even aware of it. And also the stigma, the fear of discrimination, the fear of being outed, even when you go to healthcare facilities, also drove, they are staying away from healthcare services in the state. Psychological barriers, like I mentioned, stigma, shame, not wanting to be outed, and the issue of emotional distress that comes from misgendering or some snide remarks in especially the healthcare system. So we also found that peer also influence the knowledge of these services, the way they access the services, and the issues of violence among trans women and key population community is also another thing that limits their access to healthcare services in the country. Okay, I'm just gonna... Yes, like I said, we were trying to hear from this community. We did not just want to do a research on the key issues. So we met and even exceeded our expectation. By the time we were done with the research, we had a really robust information on the specific issues affecting key population, and as well, we also were able to use these findings in knowledge dissemination to key stakeholders, to policy makers, and we've been making great feats in the state because our research was robust enough to give them all the information that they need to provide the best services and inclusive services for the community. Thank you very much.
I truly apologize, but I am sure we're going to have a robust discussion. There is one element that is very new, and I'm sure we're all wanting to hear. What has climate change got to do with vulnerability, human rights, and health? I'm looking forward to the next speaker. I think you won the prize for the track. You did, yes, I need to acknowledge you. I think you're going to get your prize in the plenary session, but please do acknowledge her. She got the prize for the track. Please do come up and let's listen to your presentation. Thank you very much. 6 minutes, yes, darling.
Thank you so much, moderator. Like I said, my name is Tahonga Benyoda Mugwanyu, and I'm with Seward Zimbabwe. So So my study is looking at how climate change impacts HIV and AIDS vulnerability amongst rural Manicaland girls in Zimbabwe. So there's been a lot of issues discussed. There's been a lot of discussions around healthy, around SRHR, but there's not been a link that links climate change and health. Yet climate change is only seen as an environmental or probably an economical factor, but it also affects health greatly. That is what inspired us to carry out this research. So when you look at climate change in rural Zimbabwe, in Manicaland, so I'm sure most of us probably have heard of the cyclone Idai. So when climate change disasters happen, we only focus mainly on the food that people should get, probably the evacuation, the accommodation they should get, and probably they are moved from their places that they will be staying because they are destroyed and they are then put in camps where they stay together. But there's no conversation around the health of those people, especially SRHR. So this research, just in rushing through, we did a research, a study actually with Say What in 2023 to 2024 with 500 adolescent girls that is aged from 10 to 19, then 100 caregivers and 30 health care workers as well. So from the study that we did, these are our key findings that we found out. The survival at a cost, health services disrupted, silence grows louder, and missing voices and policies. So looking at survival at a cost, when these climate change disasters happen, the young people are not looking at the effects of probably what they're doing to their health, but they're looking at just surviving. So they end up engaging in transactional sex, where they have sex with someone and they get something in return, but they forget to even look at contraceptives or what they can use for them to be able to make sure they're protected in terms of their health. Then health service is disrupted. Imagine roads are disrupted. It's just water everywhere. They cannot even go to the clinic, because the clinic is not even there. The clinic is disrupted already, destroyed by the rains. Silence grows louder. This is a raw area we're talking about. Already issues to do with SRHR issues are not even talked about freely with their parents at their houses. Now it becomes even worse. Probably they could get access to these services when they go to the clinics, but the clinics are not there, and they don't even have people to be talking to about issues to do with their sexual health, and then missing voices and policy. I'm going to ask us a question. How many people from in here came from the rural areas? That's like 4 or 5 people. But looking at it, I'm here, I don't even come from the rural areas, but I'm the one who's talking about the issues of the people that are in the rural areas who are not even here. They're excluded from issues that affect them. When we carried out the study, it was us who were coming from Harare, not even in the rural area, because we noticed there's a challenge that is in the rural areas. So we also need to, there's exclusion, they're not included in issues that affect them. So we might wonder where the link is. So in summary, climate shocks amplify structural inequalities because already there are inequalities that are existing. This one, in Shona they say, Namo aibe paneyingwe. They're trying to say vulnerabilities come to those who are already vulnerable already because they are in marginalized communities. And when this happens, those vulnerabilities are then expanded. So climate shocks amplify structural inequalities. Poverty drives risks, coping mechanisms. That's when I was talking about transactional sex and all other activities that the adolescents are now involved in. Disrupted services and stigma limit prevention and treatment, policy exclusion and vulnerability. And let us also remember, climate change disasters don't just destroy homes, they dismantle systems that protect the girls. So this is what we're asking for, our call for action. We are proposing that we integrate climate resilience into SRHR and HIV programming, and not just limit it to environmental and economic programming, but also even in health, SRHR and HIV programming. Fund youth-led models like the Say What, the research that we did, the model that we have. for early warning advocacy and outreach, include adolescent girls in climate health policy formulation, especially those that come from the areas that are mainly affected by those climate change disasters that they face. Also invest in resilient health infrastructure, mobile clinics, SRHR kids, support intersectional research, yes, bridging climate change and healthy. So I think from just in 6 minutes, this is what our study is all about. Thank you so much.
Their presentation on the main program, the abstract of their presentation. But beyond that, we want to dig in the next 10 minutes into these excellent presentations. What does this mean beyond what they have found? What is it that you're doing in Lagos and Ogun State that is making impact? What is it that we found from the social media, harvesting the report from the social media that we have to translate into actions going forward? And when it comes to call for action, what is it that we're calling and who is it that we're calling to make actions? I do hear you about climate change, and I know that climate change, a street affects, it disrupts health services. It also disrupts schools that are the protective systems actually for those young persons. We see that when the impact of climate change happens and there's disruption, many young girls in Africa never return to school because they are back home and they're pregnant, because the school that otherwise protects them was taken away. So let's open up the space for discussion. I like first hearing from the first two speakers about the impact of law on access, and not only just access, discriminatory law, that's what you were talking about, but also the social discrimination itself impacting on enforcing what is already inequality, which we heard from the second speaker. So, but of great interest to me was the place for telehealth. You noted that in your scanning. Is this a way we want to go as we're seeing the loss of community-specific responses to the needs of key and vulnerable population due to the erosion of external funding and the slow response from internal funding? And then when we're looking at vulnerability, even in this inequality with climate change, what is it that we might be dealing with? Your presentation, what change should it bring about? And then we'll pass it down. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much. The main thrust of my presentation is that it's important when legislating acts that have health implication to look at it in a complex perspective. When human rights was fronted, the results seem to have had great impact on service access. And immediately after these effects started playing out, there was a circular that was circulated again to create clarity both for the service providers but also the people that were accessing these services, that service provision had to remain supreme above human rights that were being promoted or fronted in that legislation.
Sorry, what someone brings the mic, my mic for me, the volunteer in the room, please bring my mic, apologies. I just want to ask you a question. When we were listening to the plenary today, one of the things we heard from the community speaker, and which I think is very valid, is that we measure all the time this quantity. We measure the number of drugs and we measure prevention and the number of shits. We never are able to measure these human rights impacts that we're talking about, these issues that you've raised. But I love the fact that you could do your study unearthing information from the media. Going forward, if we really want to make an impact, we have to be able to measure. It is what we measure that will make a difference with. From your own perspective and your piece of work, how do you think we should institutionalize a measurement process within our health response to enable us measure, as civil society, the progress we are making? We have a brilliant presentation from Lagos and Ogun State, but that's not Nigeria, that's just two. What is it that we could do to measure in ways that we can ask and say changes are truly happening or changes are not happening? Thank you. It's just your perspective.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, one of the aspects that really needs to be focused on is to have these things up front when you want to institutionalize measurements. identify the indices, make sure that the process is participatory, but also set it up up front, not to first implement, then think of measurement when implementation has already happened. It has to be intentional. Yeah, thank you.
Share your perspective on your presentation. Congratulations once again.
Thank you very much. My presentation today is just showing the effort that we continue to put in HIV programming, and our major findings was that despite all that, as all the resources, all the power that has been put into HIV programming, there are still some issues that we are unable to get over. And unfortunately, I'm echoing.
Oh, please continue.
Okay.
Ignore that voice.
Unfortunately,
It's
these
AI.
issues.
What is it? You are on live. Can you please stop your live transmission? Just put off the volume, and then we can have one house. Thank you. Please go on. Go on.
Okay. So the research our findings were showing that we've put in so much resources, yet we are unable, like you mentioned, to measure, real impact in what we are doing. And it's because of these little issues that we think are not really structural, or they are not really loud for us to be able to identify. And that is why we went deep. We did a very robust research on finding key information into healthcare access in Lagos and Ogun State. And so far, our findings has been able to help us pick up in spaces where we know that key decisions can be made, including key population in Lagos and Ogun State. We've used information that we got to boldly speak up and not just give vague information. We're able to give real data, real insights into what key population and marginalized women continue to face. And you're speaking about telehealth. It was through this research we were able to find that, okay, if you cannot go to the healthcare systems because of this or that, how about it comes to your phone? How about you're able to speak to anybody, get the kind of service that you need? In fact, you can be pulled to a safe healthcare service, based on the kind of prompts that you put. And we're able to develop the BEMI bot, which is currently running in Lagos and Ogun State. In fact, we are planning to expand it throughout Nigeria. And what BEMI bot does is that you get a very holistic service on it. We are onboarding healthcare workers. We are onboarding mental health service providers. We are onboarding government officials that could direct you. There's location service where you could find key inclusive healthcare systems in your location, and it's going to be a big deal, and it's one of the things that the research helped us to be able to identify.
Excellent, thanks. Let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate that. This is about moving beyond research, but translating research to action. But I think one of the things we want to see is what this means for including non-health indicators in our national health surveillance system, because we need to pick up this non-health indicators that affects the quality of life. Celebrating your success story. Thank you once again. Let's celebrate her. And yes, let's listen to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So from my presentation, this is just a reflection of the work that we have been doing as Say What, because we are going beyond just only the health aspect, but also looking at areas like climate change and how it intersects with health. We also have like what we call them Say What Plus. That's where we look at issues to do with climate change. So this research that we have done, it really opens up our minds to say, you know what, climate change is not just an environmental issue, because when you look at it, even when you look at sustainable development goals, it's on goal number 13, looking at just the environment and what we can do, but you're forgetting that we're also looking at the health of the young people. And also the other thing that I can say is nothing for us without us, like they say. So nothing for the people staying in the rural areas without them. Let's also involve them more in these issues. Like when we're carrying out our study, you could actually realize that some of them don't even realize that there's something called climate change and it is causing these disasters that are affecting them. But they know that in their area that they stay in, there's so much floods that come, probably the Cyclone Eli, which is like one of the most devastating ones. Yeah. So you realize they're not even aware. So we need to like do more work in actually also educating our communities about climate change and how that impacts them, and not forgetting our health. So also in our programming, this is a call to action to say, you know what, when we're looking at the health of the young people, the health of us, the youth, let's not forget how these disasters impact our health. Because honestly, these disasters, they are not gender neutral. They affect people differently. And they're also not age neutral. Because if you look at it, somebody who is 19 and somebody who is 30, they're not affected in the same way. Probably the person who is already 30, they know what to do in terms of their sexual health. But the person who is 19, they're still growing up and they need more guidance. And honestly, they can't have those conversations at their houses. So at least if they get access to mobile clinics, it's good for them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think one of the things I'll be raising up in the House is, if there's anything the last presenter is raising, is I need to start moving towards the One Health approach, where we're looking at human, we're looking at the environment, and in that holistic response, we can then start to look at integration. Unfortunately, the One Health approach has been majorly implemented through the pandemic response. But in real life, we have to move to this One Health, where we're integrating climate change, HIV, vulnerability. But then, how do we do this? These are things that we find on paper. I heard about your excellent work on HIV, but we should be looking at integrating HIV, TB, malaria. What is that? How is that happening on your platform? You're looking at climate change. You're looking at sexual and reproductive health of adolescents, but we have to do more than health, sexual and reproductive health of adolescents. They are vulnerable to many things. In the work I do, I'm looking at integration of oral health and mental health with the sexual and reproductive health. What does this mean for integration? And I'm also asking, what did you see in your media harvesting of results in terms of integration? Did you see anything in those reports that may help facilitate integration? Is there anybody who might want to respond to this?
Okay, I'll just start by speaking to the telehealth AI. It actually integrates both HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria, not just HIV alone. And it gives you access to places where you can access the services all across the state for HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria as well. And like I said, our findings helped us to fine-tune how we made the chatbot inclusive. Yes, because learnings from our findings, especially words, discriminatory words, discriminatory behaviors, we use that into developing the chatbot basically. And we are trying to ensure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that we've made. And also, the findings has been able to, like I said, help us speak factually in policy dialogues, because the discriminatory laws are still there, and that has kind of been the weapon that a lot of discriminatory issues hold on to, right? So we have been able to use key findings from this research to see how we can include key population and marginalized women in healthcare policies in both Lagos and Ogun State. And so far, we've been moving in a progressive way. And
are you able to do rural communities?
Yes, we do. We followed an intersection approach. We used both semi-urban, urban, rural slums, even the rural communities. We ensure that we add a representative voice of every aspect of the community, both the socioeconomic, the education levels, even the locations. And because we know that we cannot run away from the importance of social media, the importance of phones, right? Even in the rural communities, there's a way to access internet services, right? So we knew that the bot is something that was going to work, and we made it inclusive to the extent that you don't need to use internet, or you could get it on just a phone that doesn't use internet basically, and you're good to go.
Excellent. Let's hear from what are your thoughts on integration when we're looking at climate change, not just HIV for adolescents, adolescent health? What else? What else should we be bringing on the table when we're thinking about climate change and its impact on these young people? Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, of course, we need to start with the people in the rural areas, people in the areas affected greatly by climate change, and we also need to look into technology. We are in the era where we are moving with artificial intelligence. We need to look at what can we do to use the artificial intelligence for us to be able to make our communities more aware of climate change. And climate change, how does it impact, like you said, health, not just SRHR, looking at climate change and other diseases, looking at climate change and probably malaria, looking at climate change and tuberculosis. Actually, there's a lot that we need to do. We needed to do a lot of work in terms of climate change and how it can be integrated into our programming in terms of health. But what's very key for now, right now, to me is how do we move with the era that we are in of us using artificial intelligence. Probably it can be through the early warning detection systems to say, okay, in this area there's going to be, and how can we do that using AI? Is something that we need to look into. But firstly, we need to look at the rural areas, the areas that are affected greatly, and make sure they are aware of what's going on and what they can do and how they can get services.
Thank you. So you're the last voice. What are you saying?
Thanks so much.
All right, the hands are coming up now.
Okay, thanks so much. Perhaps what I can say about integration and what I've just presented is that we cannot continue burying our heads in the sand, that health cuts across all sectors, and it's important, even when we are thinking about legislation that may appear to be less of health, there are implications that such legislation may bring, and it's exactly what played out when service delivery was less considered more than human rights in legislating this. So health cuts across, and it's important, as the nuances may not be so much, it's important to look at all those aspects that may have serious implications on health.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see that we have 3 minutes, so you have 30 seconds. Please just ask the question. 30 seconds. Don't say thank you. 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So we've seen the goal of laws in Africa, across African countries, trying to outlaw homosexuality, right? And the gist has always been that homosexuality is un-African, and that's why we must outlaw it, right? We must root it out with legislation, and you've seen the goal of punitive laws across African countries. I want to ask, what do you think? Do you think homosexuality is also un-African? And if that is the case, then you don't need to go further. But if you feel otherwise, how should we, if you feel homosexuality is not African, is African, and it's part of our fabrics, it's part of our traditions and cultures, it has nothing, nobody learned it anywhere, right? So then how would we now approach advocacy to these policymakers, with the beat of decriminalizing these laws that they've put in place? I don't know if you get a question.
I'll take that. And I think it's a brilliant question, but at the same time, I don't think we want to move the way of the debate. I think that we have enough evidence that diversity has always occurred in our context, wherever it is, Europe, America, US. And this excellent debate you have is not an African debate, it's also everywhere, But this is where, for me, I think ethics comes in. And when we're starting to put those words on the table rather than generating debates, is to start everything we have for understanding that we're first human before we're black and white. We're human before we're green or yellow. We're human before I'm heterosexual or homosexual. We're human. And that is the point I put on the table. The second point I also put on the table in this space is just to dispel that, is to note that although we know about human rights, we're always fighting for non-human rights. It doesn't come. It's human rights. It's the declaration. But believe me, look at it. Every element of human right you're fighting. It's not just homosexuality. It's about sexual and reproductive rights for adolescents. It's about sexual and reproductive rights. You fight your government for your rights. So you must contextualize that fight within that definition and redefine the hostility against sexuality-based discrimination. Finally, I also want to put on the table that if you're not really aware, it's an African culture to discriminate. our culture discriminates. It's not that it came up because of pops per se. There's always a they and them. There's always a seniority. It's our culture. So when we're derooting stigma, we have to do it holistically. We saw stigma affects mpox. We saw it come up with COVID. It's unfortunate that we do. In my own country, like Nigeria, we have OSUs that we discriminate against. It's a cultural discrimination. It's more so in an African context than other places they also have. So once we start to deal with stigma holistically, uprooting stigma holistically rather than the siloed approach, we would get better response. Do I have evidence to support that? Believe me, it's just my perspective. But I don't think we're dealing with stigma as an holistic thing. We're dealing with stigmas as silos. And we're not succeeding because we're not removing the roots. We're addressing the branches. So that is how I would answer you. So let's fight for our human right and do not dehumanize us in the name of whatever silos you want to cut us into. And that's how I'll address that. Thank you. 30 seconds.
My question goes to my brother from Uganda. My heart goes to Uganda. In your presentation,
there's only one brother here. You don't need to add the Uganda angle. There's only one.
Your presentation told us that our friends from the LGBTQ plus society, they're no longer dropping in clinics and hospitals. Meaning that they are now going somewhere. Where are they going to get their services? What are the chances that the policy that you mentioned in Uganda is leading to the creation of backyard pharmacies, where they are now going to start getting medications and treatments from the backyard pharmacies in the streets? And that also is a danger that when you're using backyard pharmacies, you can access...
1 second. Backyard pharmacy is the issue. Next. Our time is up. They're waiting for us, yes. Straight to the point. Backyard pharmacy, yes? Mama.
My question is around how we are seeing... I was taught not to say thank you, but I'm used to it, so I'll say I appreciate it. Yes. Let me move on to the question. In line with integration and how we are sort of moving away from local knowledge and skill that is already in existence, I believe having new things to put in place to respond to the new crisis that we're facing is much more expensive than just modifying what is already existing. And so I want to find out if we've explored any opportunities in integrating the already existing knowledge and skills into our approaches to responding to the various problems that we've identified, especially in line with climate change and the legal aspect.
Excellent questions, but I'm going to draw those 2 questions to us as a whole. Our time is already up. The next session should be coming in. You should be going for posters. I want to thank the presenters for the excellent presentations. I want to congratulate Nana again for our award as the Best Track D presenter, and I want to thank you all for being an excellent audience. Please take on this excellent 3 questions for going forward, and the next session where you have an opportunity to present them, please present them. Otherwise, let's keep thinking about them and let's blog about it. There's a space to dialogue on the blog. Please blog about this session. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you, darling.